Yeah, we have a good crowd today. That's because the yarn's so fun.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, what do we think of this yarn?
luscious.
I love this yarn.
Any guesses as to what it is?
I
Is it
cheated and
Jacob?
looked.
Hmm?
Is it Jacob?
No?
Okay. I thought because that was in the newsletter today, maybe that it was.
Uh-huh.
And I'm thinking, man, I got to get me some of this.
No, our Jacob, the Jacob is that we talked about in the newsletter is already in our lineup. You know, we've had that for a couple of years now, and it is just the loveliest stuff. It's very soft and airy and light. I always think of the Jacob and the Shetlandia and the 2-ply Finnish wool as being all kind of in a group together. They all have similar qualities and handling, and they're all really similar that way. Anybody else have a guess?
Well, looking at the website gives a little bit of a hint.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
cheated. I think
but I
figured
can't
it out.
remember. I can't remember exactly what it said, but I figured that's what we were working with.
But for those who are actually guessing, does anybody have a guess? without running to the website and looking around.
Is it the light gray? Because
Yeah.
I put mine out of order. So you said light gray?
Yeah, the light gray, the pale gray.
I thought it was really similar to Better Breakfast.
Oh, that's interesting. And
Yep.
it would be for a variety of reasons, but
Yep.
yeah, but it's not Better Breakfast, which is for those who don't know, our alpaca merino blend. Interesting that you say that. That's interesting. It is a 100% wool yarn.
It feels like number one, the Romney Merino mix.
Oh,
When
really?
When I was kidding with
too.
That's a very interesting observation.
It's
But it's
smoother than a Kent.
yeah,
It's beautiful. It feels so
Lovely.
good. You're knitting with it.
it's velvety.
Yeah. Like the number one, like the Romney Merino.
Yeah, which is funny because I always think of our Kent as not being that kind of yarn, you know, not being that kind of velvety soft yarn. I think of it as more toothy and a little more, I don't know if I would say rustic, but it's a long wool, you know, and it feels like it.
Hmm.
Any other guesses? Okay, so it is a blend, but it's a blend so it's a blend of CVM and merino. Because, and I really didn't want to blend it, but CVM is so expensive. So we had to blend it because it's very, very costly. So who even ever heard of CVM? Okay, Robin. I don't know how many hands are up, like maybe 5 out of 30. So CVM stands for California Variegated Mutant, which is the name that was settled on for the breed. And the story really begins with in 1915 with a man named A.T. Spencer, who lived in the Bay Area of California near San Francisco at the Panama Pacific International. There was an international fair. It was eventually turned into it was like a World's Fair. So
on Treasure Island.
What?
It was on Treasure Island, I think.
I think
I'm sorry.
so.
I didn't mean to interrupt. I think it was on
Okay.
Treasure Island.
Okay, so I don't know that much about
Okay,
that.
sorry. I've lived in
No.
California my whole life.
Yeah, and my story isn't about the fair itself in particular, but so contingent of people from every country came to show off their very best things, and the fair was actually put together to celebrate the opening of the Panama Canal, which of course enabled many more goods to travel to many more places from the Southern Hemisphere to the Northern Hemisphere, and from Africa to across the world, to the Americas, the western part of the Americas. It was much faster to get to California from Cape Horn than to go any other direction. And so from New Zealand, were brought the very best of the prize-winning New Zealand Romneys, which is a sheep we've discussed before. And because that's what's in our Kent yarn, number one, not New Zealand Romney, but Romney. Now, the New Zealand Romney, if you remember that story about the Kent and also the Perrendales, which we just did 2 weeks ago, there was a period in New Zealand when the vast central part of the island, of one of the islands, the South Island, became very barren from overgrazing. And so wool and sheep in general being their main product, their national product, the New Zealand breeders and producers began looking for ways to make their sheep better producers in those new, more arid conditions. And also over time, the Romney sheep, which is a British breed, adapted to the New Zealand climate and terrain, which is hilly and dry, as opposed to the marshy, cold wetlands that it is native to. So the adapted Romney sheep, it has some different characteristics than the British Romney. It will feed on slightly less nutritious foods, and they're better climbers, so they're physically adapted to a slightly different climate, and still produces a very robust Romney sheep. So the sheep from New Zealand arrive in San Francisco, are shown at the fair, and then cannot be returned to New Zealand for whatever reason. Probably the South Islands, New Zealand and Australia, have a lot of rules about what can come back into the country after it's been out and what needs to be quarantined. And because they are an island, they don't want, they can't risk bringing non-native seeds and insects and viruses onto the island that might infect a lot of their other sheep and land there. So, and I don't know if that's the reason. None of the research I was doing actually gave me a reason for this, but I assume that the sheep couldn't be returned to New Zealand for that reason, for purposes of health and safety. And so this man, A.T. Spencer, sees the opportunity to buy these prized, Romney sheep for himself, for his farm. He also was looking to, he was raising Rambouillet sheep, which are a very common breed on the West Coast and up into the Pacific Northwest and Montana and places like that. There are a lot of people who are native to the Basque region of France, where Rambouillets are raised kind of, that's kind of their native area. A lot of immigrants came to the United States during the gold rush and from that region, and not finding their pot of gold, literally. At the time, they saw opportunities out in the West to create sheep ranches and settle there. So Rambouillet sheep are raised quite prolifically out West, but there has always been a concern about a concern out west for raising animals that can exist on less water, less vegetation, less nutritious vegetation, can tolerate high heat, harsh winds, kind of all the same conditions that exist in this mountainous region of central New Zealand. So this rancher, A.T. Spencer, took these New Zealand Romneys and began crossing them with his Rommelay sheep to create, just to see what would happen really, but ended up developing a new breed, which is called the Rommeldales. And it kind of flourished with him. He never sold off any of his sheep. He never let them be let the rams be used for breeding elsewhere. He kept his flock very contained in his own within his own grasp. So it never was a big it never expanded kind of geometrically the way a sheep flock can if it's dispersed. And also, because because purebred Rommeldales, all the genetics will go back to that original breed, that original flock. The flock being so small, you risk a lot of, as we talked about before, you risk genetic kind of weakening if you don't breed out enough. Anyway, this all occurred in the early 1900s. By the 1940s or so, he was selling off his flock. A family by the name of Sexton took it over, and they really invested in bringing the Rommeldale breed to a healthier and larger numbers. It's still a very small breed, even to this day. On the National Livestock Conservancy, it's still listed as a critical, on the critical list in terms of numbers. And it is it's a Native American breed at this point. Now, fast forward to the 1960s. Actually, I think in the 50s, the first mutant was noticed in the Rommeldale flock on the Sexton farm. So normally, and we talked about this when we talked about Polworths, normally when, if you're breeding for white wool or you're breeding for specific characteristics, if a lamb that has mutant qualities is born, in the case of the Polworths, it was always those dark lambs, they're culled from the flock, which often means that they're slaughtered or given away or sold off for out of the ranch organization. And in the case of the Polworths, you might remember Wendy, our hero Wendy, took all of those culled lambs and cultivated a flock of dark Polworth, and has over the years expanded that into a real thing. Well, the same thing happened with the Rommeldales. So these mutant Rommeldales, the first one was discovered probably like in I think the 1950s. There's a little bit of a disparity in some of the research, but I did read an extensive interview with the daughter of this Sexton family whose work within the family breeding program goes all the way back to the time when they actually purchased their first Rommeldales from the original breeder. And she says that the first mutant was born on their farm. And one of their farm hands, his name is Glenn Ideman, rather than culling that little lamb, he took an interest in it. And then, began to take these mutant lambs. There would be one every so often, and he was really interested in them. They were born with, so the Rommeldale it looks a lot like it's similar to a Romney build. It has a clean face and what they call an open face. So the face lacks a lot of fluffy hair. It's a larger sheep. It's considered a medium-sized sheep, but it weighs between 200 and 250 pounds. So that's pretty big for a sheep. Anyway, he noticed that these mutant lambs had completely different coloring. They were born with what they call a badger face, which is a face that has stripes from the snout, from the nose up to the eyes, as a big, it's called a stripe, but it looks like a big band, and often also like dark fleece around or dark coloring around the eye sockets. So those badger face lambs, he was taking aside and breeding them to see if he could, create another strain, which is where the California variegated mutant name came from. Not the most creative name, but certainly descriptive of what was happening. So he really began a concerted effort to create this. It's really a subspecies of a breed. So it's not really a separate breed at this point. It's not considered separate from Rommeldales, although they do have a breeders association just for CVM. It really is, and is almost always described as Rommeldale / CVM is really how the breed is, mostly named. And so that's kind of the background of, where the breed came from. It's a very small pool of people who raise these sheep, and just an extremely small number. When Glenn Eidemann sold off his flock in the, I think the 1970s was when he finally sold off his flock, it only numbered 75 animals.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, and those animals all have genetics going back to the original Spencer flock. So there is a national organization for the breeding of CVM, and they have really strict rules about the genetics being of that type, the ones that go all the way back to the Spencer farm. The thing is, like a CVM can be a Rommeldale, but a Rommeldale can't necessarily be a CVM without the right, kind of markings and colorings. So there is also a national Rommeldale CVM conservancy that has a little more, has a broader, registry of animals. It's a little bit confusing. Anyway, their characteristics in terms of being like a unique breed, the characteristics really have to do with what they will eat and what they can tolerate in terms of climate and fodder, nutritional fodder. They're, as we've discussed a few times now, the push to develop the West into these large ranching areas really necessitated working with breeds of sheep that could take care of themselves, that could be out on the open range for months at a time and stick with the flock, that they were flocking types that stayed together. They lambed easily and mothered well, producing a large number of multiple lambs is an important trait. Resistance to parasites and viruses and hoof rot and all of those kinds of things that a rancher would have to be on hand to catch and doctor. All of that any of that that you can breed out of your sheep is helpful when you can't keep an eye on them every minute, even small flocks. So those are the kind of concerns that the original breeder had. So another thing that's really important is the placement of the udder, and the position of the udder needs to be sort of perfect, so that especially with sheep that have multiple births, so that the lambs can get to the milk easily and it's comfortable for the mother to nurse, and they can kind of do it anywhere. They have, like we talked about with the Perindales, a larger hindquarter area. The wool, the coat, comes in a variety of different shades of wool, everything from not a black, but a nearly black brown, silver grays, beautiful morit colors, everything that the merino genes and the Romney genes will bring in terms of color are in it. They usually have a dark, CVMs have that badger face. Hey, somebody's got their, I think it's Carol. I think she left her computer. Carol, can you mute your computer if you're on hand? I think she walked away. Anyway, if you've got noise on in the background and you're not muted, please do mute. So the CVM has a stripy face, ears that are horizontal, a dark belly. So the top part of the fleece is going to be a lighter color and the bottom is going to be dark. Like it might be a gray brown with a black belly, or a silver gray with a black belly, or white with tan. There's a whole variety of different combinations. It's a little bit like the I want to say like the Jacob a little bit, but a little bit more like the different colorings and markings that you might see in Shetland sheep, where there's just so many. There's such a great variety of, circles around the eyes, and dark legs and light legs versus whatever's going on with the top coat. So it's kind of fun to look at all those different types of markings and colorings, and I've got pictures to share. So I thought that was fun last week. Unfortunately, these don't translate apparently onto the recorded piece that goes up on YouTube, but okay. So here's some CVM in the winter. You can see their coat is a little heavier. It's even a little frosty on the outside. It's a little hard to see that their bellies are different colors, but you can see the variety just in this one photo of everything from white to silver gray to tan, and the morit in the background, the brown. I've got some better ones too. Let's see. Let's see. Here's a really good picture of that badger face. So that's what I'm talking about. See the stripe? It's almost like mutton chops up the side, the horizontal ears. By the way, these photos are from the website of the farm where our CVM came from, which is in Pennsylvania. This is a farm that's been in existence for over 100 years. They haven't been raising Romaldales and CVMs for 100 years, but for quite a long time. And the person who owns it now actually took it over from someone else who was already raising Romaldales there. Let's see, here's another. This is a more of a brown badger face. You can see the little brown cap this one has on his head and the dark legs versus the light top fleece. And then there's one right behind that has a slightly darker fleece with a mane of like a dark wash down his neck or her neck. Let's see. This is a picture of one of them being sheared. This is an old picture. It is from this farm. It is from the farm where we got our fleece, but as you can see, it's from 2014. So it's probably not one of our fleeces. But you can see in the shaved area right next to that guy's knee or right across from that guy's knee, the spots in the fleece are like almost like stains. When they're shaved down, you can see that they're truly are what they call piebald or spotted like that. And look how big that fleece is. They're huge. One more. Oh, here's another summertime one with two of the girls in their coats. So these are this ranch or this farm does coat their sheep. This is for those that weren't here when we discussed this previously. This is something that coating the sheep is a little bit controversial. You know, some people are really against it. Some people are really for it. Some people have hard-held mythology about doing it. It's really to protect the fleece from getting a lot of stuff, a lot of vegetable matter and sticks and things caught in it. But it also does have benefits to the skin of the sheep too. It prevents dark sheep from getting too hot and kind of suffering, you know, just like dogs can suffer from the heat, so can sheep. And it can affect the quality of their wool and just the quality of their life. And anytime that sheep are not feeling their best, they are open to being attacked by parasites and mites and things like that. So the coating can help a little bit with that. It helps to prevent breakage at the tips, and so it preserves a little bit of length in the fleece. You know, those are some of the positives that pro coat people will tell you about. Let's see. It also, because their fleece is sticky and can cake up a little bit with lanolin and what we call swint, which is like a sweaty, greasy stuff that collects. If you can imagine not washing your hair for 6 months or a year, it would get caked up with stuff too. And that can actually cause a situation when the fleece gets longer of it catching on, you know, catching on a shrub or something that the sheep cannot get out of and causing them to starve in place or dehydrate right in place. Again, similar to a dog's collar getting caught on something if it's out loose and, you know, you can't find it. So, many people, there are people who are pro coating for a lot of good reasons. And it's not at all like a sissy kind of thing. It benefits us as the users of the yarn. You can see in the yarn that you have that it's very clean. It is, and I believe again that this fiber may have been combed. When we first purchased a batch of this fiber because we wanted to do it in barn box, and we purchased a sample batch, which is, you know, 40 or 50 pounds, and we had it spun. And we like it but that particular batch had quite a bit of shortcuts in it and that were balling up and kind of making it seem substandard. Now this fiber, it's the same fiber, so yet it lacks those little neppy shortcuts. So I'm thinking that it did get combed because when we were having our CVM spun, the wool comb wasn't up and running yet at the mill. So this makes me think, this yarn, when I saw it, I was like, oh wow, that feels like it's combed. It's so smooth and lush. So you might have already you know, assessed that this is not a luster wool, it's a chalk wool. Our favorite new thing to know about fiber. It is a matte, has kind of a matte finish, which gives it a very velvety. It's not to say that it doesn't have a little bit of sheen to it. I think all good wool has some amount of glossiness if it's healthy, but it's definitely not like the luster wool would have, which gives it a different, you know, it has a matte finish, but that doesn't take away from its ability to have depth and a kind of a lushness to the hand of it. I don't know. I also felt like it was really lovely to work with. And I feel lucky that we could bring this really rare fiber to you guys so you could try it too. I would love to have this in our lineup, our regular lineup. It would just, I don't know, it's too expensive, and we would be pricing it out of the realm of practicality for most people. To give an example, it would, I'm trying to think how much that cost. It would have to be a minimum. It would have to be a minimum of $48 a skein to be at all feasible for us, and really to fall in line with our other pricing, it'd have to be really more like $51 or $52 a skein. So it's really hard to move yarn at that price. So even our most devoted fans would wince, I think, at like a sweater quantity of that. But that's kind of what we're up against with this fiber. And that's a very, I don't want to say a bargain basement price, but that's a very, very good price. What the price we got on that wool was very, very reasonable. So the raw wool to spin yarn from this wool typically runs about $28 a pound or something like that for raw wool, which is just astronomical compared to what we pay for our other wools. Like we generally purchase wool between like $3 and $5 a pound for most of our yarns. So $28 a pound is like a far, far, far reach from that. And we'd basically have to cut out all our profit, or just about all our profit, to bring it to market, you know, at any kind of a purchasable price. And we got a really good price on our test batch, but I just don't know if that, even at that, like I said, even if we could get it at that price all the time, it would have to be like a $48 to $52 a skein yarn. So you know, that's kind of what we're up against all the time, deciding when we decide what we can bring to market and what we can't. Let's see. Any questions so far?
I just want to say that I really felt the Romney in it when I was knitting with it. I really felt like I was.
That was such an incredible observation when you said that.
Well, I think the less you know, the more you realize. I'm so not the expert, but I really felt like I was knitting with a very similar yarn. And
I wish I knew. None of the none of the research I had, like when we talked about the Parendale, we had like this exact, the breed standards have exact percentages of like Romney genes to, I'm sorry, I'm completely forgetting what the other, it was Romney, it wasn't Romney Merino cross, it was Romney. Does anybody remember? Just for some reason not remembering. Maybe in my notes, maybe I have it. Hang on.
It was Border Cheviot.
Oh, right.
Cheviot.
Border Cheviot, right, and Romney. So it's like 85% Romney, 15% Border Cheviot, or 15 to 20, or 15 to 25. And at the lower end at 75% Romney, it can be in the breed. It can be in the breed, organization, but it can't be registered as a registered lamb. So I wish we had the research I can and can't do. The resources that are available are just not all consistent in this way. So I wish I knew what the percentage is for this breed, because I always thought of CVM as a straight out like merino type, like something heavily merino. And the fact that you picked up on the Romney in it is very interesting, because just because it is a fine wool, I do believe that the Romney genetics still remain fairly small, but I could be wrong. The Romney comes on the male side, so it's the Romney ram over the Romiley ewe is the breeding of it. And there are people that are working on other crosses. The pure CVM Romildale people are like, we don't even speak to those people. But they are lower than dirt. No, it's not like a war. It's just like they are firm in that outside genetics from other breeds are not allowed. But on the farm that our CVM comes from, she does maintain a pure CVM flock. It is the largest Romildale CVM flock in the United States. But she also has a crossbreeding program of other mixes that she's working with. And one of them is an Icelandic Romildale cross, which could be really beautiful, because again, both of those breeds produce colors, and the Icelandic coat is such a beautiful coat, although coarse. I love many things about it, but the way it feels to me isn't my favorite. But I could really see where introducing Romildale into it would benefit it quite a bit. So anyway, I cut you off and I didn't mean to, Susan, but did you have anything else you wanted to say about the...
No, when I'm knitting, and since I'm new to really knitting with these natural wools, undyed wools, I'm just paying so close attention to how they feel as I knit, as to how's that going to feel next to the skin, which is more, and like I'm not trying to be funny. I think the less you know, the more observations you make and less assumptions you make.
Yeah.
And I just felt that this one was so close to my experience with the first one, with the Romney Merino, that I was like, oh, these would both be very nice against the skin. So yeah, no, this has been fantastic. Thank you.
I always, I don't know, I always thought you were really, really up on your breeds, the way that you've like talked in our group and contributed and everything. Not like you talk like a know-it-all or anything like that. Not at all. Just, you seem really into it. And
I'm an active learner.
That's really good. I love it. I love it.
Thank you.
Audrey?
Well, my question is, the Kent is Merino Romney blend,
Correct.
and it sounds like this CVM is a Merino Romney blend, but in the genetics of it, rather than the two individual fleeces blending.
Correct.
So what is your experience with the difference between the Kent versus the CVM?
I felt like the CVM was very well, and don't forget the CVM yarn that you're using is also a blend. So it's CVM with merino, it's blended merino and CVM.
Okay.
So it's got even more merino than the Kent
Okay.
in in effect. But what you're getting at is what's the difference between the hair follicle and being bred and using two hair follicles from different types to achieve like the same percentage, and the
Right.
and
Yes.
the different is the action that the fiber asserts on the spinning process. So if you're spinning something coarser with something finer, there's an active interaction there with the spinning, with the two fibers with each other, and with the centrifugal force of spinning it. So the coarser long wool, the purebred long wool, the Romney has its own crimp and shape and micron diameter that's going to assert itself on the mix. When you genetically mix a fiber, literally the sheep is extruding a different shape of fleece from its
Okay.
skin, and that is going to behave differently when you spin it. So this let me just get to.
I see what you're talking about, because
Yeah. So
the long wool qualities have already been tamed by the genetics.
Correct.
So it
Well-
doesn't spin the same way and interact with the merino in the same way that a straight Romney would.
Right. A Romney wool next, a Romney lock of wool next to a CVM lock of wool is going to look not quite S-shaped, but it's going to have a much more relaxed crimp. And the micron diameter of Romney runs from like 25 to 32 microns. And with CVM, it's 20 to 25, which is quite a bit finer, which is well down in the merino range, even getting toward like the Shetland range, really fine. The length of the lock is also like 3 to 6 inches as opposed to 5 to 8 inches that a Romney could produce. So and Romney can even produce a little bit longer than that. They just,
Pardon my claw.
that's okay. So the crimp on the CVM is very tight, and it takes a lot of that from the Rambouillet. Rambouillet is merino. It's a French like subspecies of merino. It has all the same fleece qualities as merino does. The Rommeldale CVM is also going to maintain a lot of that elasticity and that merino has, which Romney doesn't have. If you put if you swatch your Kent and you swatch this this CVM next to each other, you're gonna see a lot more lengthening when you wash the swatches. You're gonna see a lot more lengthening of the Romney swatch than you will with the CVM or the Corriedale or even the Kent blend, if you put that next to just a pure Romney, you're going to see a lot more silkiness in the Romney. It just doesn't have that that elasticity to bounce back to its knitted shape. Jean,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Well, Audrey asked a lot of what I was going to ask, but I'm still not totally clear. So see if I've got it. So you're not just mixing merino with a CVM to produce this yarn. They're actually genetically adding a merino to, like, it's a mix of a sheep with merino sheep.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
the CVM, the Rommeldale CVM breed is a cross between the New Zealand Romney and the Rambouillet breed. So Rambouillet is a merino breed, and the Romney was crossed over it to just, like with a lot of the yarns we've explored in Barn Box. Merino is a highly sought after fiber, but it has a lot of weaknesses as a fiber, as a textile fiber. And also the sheep have a lot of weaknesses that make them fussy to raise. And so breeders are constantly looking for ways to improve on the merino breed without losing that wonderful lush coat of fleece.
Mm-hmm.
So they want to strengthen the fleece without making it coarser. They want to lengthen the fleece without making it, without losing the elasticity or the recovery qualities of it. They want to, basically toughen it without making it tough, so without making it harsh. So this cross was an attempt to do those things, was an attempt to make, to create a sheep that would survive better in the environment in which it was being raised, which was not necessarily its natural native, preferred environment. But to still produce a large volume of fleece, and to keep it marketable. So the genetics, when you start playing around with genetics and crosses, you wait to see what the results are going to be in the lambs, and whenever you get a pleasing result in a lamb, like a nice fine fleece with lots of elasticity, you breed that lamb with another one that has similar characteristics, and within a few generations you can improve on the breed genetically. So you're actually coming up with a breed that has the fineness of the merino with the toughness of the Romney in it, the desirable traits of the Romney with the fineness of merino influencing the fleece. And other things about the sheep that were desirable was to make a larger carcass, a larger meat carcass, larger hindquarters, like a different shape. Non-wrinkled skin is a really important thing, which is also was one of the aims for the Polworth sheep, was to produce a merino sheep that didn't have all those folds in the skin, which get infected and are home for lots of parasites and mites, and just make it hard to shear. I mean, for that alone, like, it just makes shearing just so much more difficult.
Okay, so then I guess maybe I'm just thick-headed, but why do they bother calling it merino when they're calling it Rambouillet, which is where that's like more, to me, the way I'm hearing it is that's more exacting where it's from and how they I know it's part of the Merino family, but why are you saying this is CVM and Merino? Because I
Well-
thought CVM is the Rabelais and the Romney.
The yarn that we spun is CVM and Merino.
Okay,
That we did blend the CVM with Merino.
yeah,
And the CVM though is a cross between Romney and Remblai.
okay. Yeah, right. Okay, I get it. So there is the reason why you're saying and Merino is because in fact, it's not the Rabelais that makes it the Merino, but it's actually other Merino that's adding that word. You know what I'm trying to say?
No, I don't know if you're talking about the breed or the yarn. The
The
yarn is a blend.
Mhm.
So only part of that yarn is CVM.
Right.
CVM is a cross. It's a
Mhm.
breed that is a cross of Remblai and Romney.
Mhm.
The yarn that we spun is CVM blended with Merino,
Mhm.
which in my mind has not, like, it's got nothing to do with what, the breed.
Okay.
But I'm having trouble accessing your confusion.
Yeah. So I guess my confusion
And
is,
if anybody else can say it better than me, if I'm not
if you can say it better, because I'm hearing that the Ramadales are both the Romney plus the Rabelais, which is a Merino, right?
yes, it's a
So then-
particular type of Merino, just like the CVM is a particular type of Romeldale.
Okay.
Remblai is a particular type of Merino. It, without going too far into it, it was, developed in France with an emphasis on different things than just textile production. So it has a much larger body and a much longer torso with a larger hindquarters. It's a more rectangular shape. The wool is just about indistinct, but the Remblai, the real difference between Remblai and Merino is in the carcass, mainly. To feed the French cuisine. Never mind. And the Spanish Merinos maintain the original African genetics, which are also included in the French ones. But the French just took it, like, the difference is that, I'm sorry if I'm being confusing, but the difference is when we talk about subspecies, like CVM being a subspecies or a subgroup of the Romeldales, they have the same genetics, but for some reason those genetics mutated to form to produce lambs with a different coloring. And then those lambs were bred with each other, which strengthened the subgroup into its own kind of category. And that's exactly the same thing. That's exactly how Remblai Merino became distinct from Saxon Merino, which are the original, kind of Spanish Merino. They have the same genetics, but the fallout of those genetics will, just like for all of us, we really have the same genetics, but some of us have red hair and some of us has black skin and some of us has white skin, and we look different. Now within a family though, when you breed families, the traits become hereditary and families look alike, even though they look different than other families, but they're all human beings. And it's the same thing with sheep and their subcategories. So you can think of the Remblais as being the French part of the family and the Saxon Merinos being the Spanish part of the family. And while they have the same genetics, they look different because, they're, by inbreeding a little bit with each other, they've distinguished themselves visually and in certain other traits. And the same thing is going on with the CVM. They are a subgroup of the Rommeldales, which originated as a cross. And so they have the same genetics as the Rommeldales, but the mutations in those genetics have been exploited to the point where they were able to multiply them.
I apologize if this question has been asked previously, but have you given us the percentage of each for just the complete, like 80%, 20%, you know? Have you
No,
given us
because
that yet?
no, because I don't have it. Like I couldn't find anything
Oh,
about that.
okay.
I
So you
was
just
saying,
don't-
I was just saying that earlier. It's actually in all the different sheep I've researched, it's pretty rare that to come
Okay,
across
but I mean,
that.
for this particular yarn that you've given us, do you
Oh,
don't have
the yarn. Yeah. I
the
think it's
yarn,
on,
the yarn, not the sheep, but the yarn?
yeah, it's like a 60 merino, 40 CVM.
Okay,
blend.
I just wasn't sure if you had said it and I missed it, and I
I'm sorry.
apologize.
I didn't say that. Sorry.
Okay,
I jumped the gun on answering you there.
okay. No, I went to yarn, not sheep. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Let's see. Oh, another interesting thing about Rommeldales and CVMs is that hang on one second. I just want to be sure I'm saying the right thing. Unlike other breeds of just about anything, so most breeds the fleece gets lighter as the animal ages. And we've talked about this in terms of goats and also sheep, that a sheep or a goat that's born brown can sometimes lighten to white even within a few weeks or months. But Rommeldale CVMs actually get darker as they age. So the color variation becomes even more rich and beautiful as the animals get darker, as the animals get older. However, that doesn't mean that the fleece gets better. It just means that it gets darker. So let's see. As I said, the genetics of this breed are very closely guarded. And so the fineness of the fleece is very consistent within the breed. It's always going to be that really fine diameter of 20 to 25 microns. Sheila, you had a question?
Yeah, thanks. It's almost a question and a comment. I think that the thing that you said that was most helpful to me with that description of the mixes of merino and the other things is that I think some of us were thinking yarn all along, where you were thinking breed, because that's sort of where you are. And once you said, I'm talking about the sheep, not the yarn, or I'm talking about the yarn, not the sheep, it made total sense to me. So that was very helpful. And you just said something about now I've lost that. That was what I was originally going to say. And if I think that I can remember what I was also going to say, I will raise my hand again. I'm sorry,
Okay.
I can't remember.
No, it's fine. It took me a long time to call on you. So let's see. So in terms of markings, the Rommeldales have a plain face, and the CVMs are, their most distinguishing characteristic is that badger face with the stripes, and the underbelly that's colored. Let's see. Just glancing over my notes to see if there's anything. I found a really good interview on a site called Countryside, imcountryside.com. There's a really good article from last October from 2021, conserving Rommeldale CVM sheep. And it's an interview with Patty Sexton, who I referred to before, has been has been working in the family breeding program pretty much all her life. Her family became involved in raising this breed in the 40s, after obtaining a large, a somewhat large number of Rommel sheep in California. Oh, and by the way, the original flock of sheep, that A.T. Spencer guy, he was raising his wool to sell to the Pendleton wool mills in, I think it's in Washington, right? Do you know, Audrey? Pendleton wools? That's in, is it in
Pendleton's in Oregon. There's
It
a
is in
town,
Oregon.
Pendleton, Oregon. Yeah.
Okay. So traditionally this is wool that goes into the finer Pendleton woolens, which I know my mom always held the Pendleton wools to high regard. So they make wool shirts and things that you can wear right next to your skin. So let's see. Anyway, this article, this interview with Patty Sexton is really good. I mean, she's very firm in her remembrance of how the kind of highlights of the timeline of the breed and how the CVM came to be and who worked with who to do it. It's a really good interview. So if you have a minute to, or a few minutes to look at iamcountryside.com, and I would just search their site for Patty, P-A-T-T-I, Sexton, S-E-X-T-O-N. You can learn a lot more about the breeding programs, and it's kind of good because she really goes into talking about breeding as a program and how exacting it is for people, how important it is for people who are trying to conserve sheep, that the genetics be preserved. And she talks about people who do crosses and people who don't, and it's really kind of interesting to hear it from someone like that. All right, any other comments or anything?
Did
Carol?
you say what part of California? She's in California, correct?
Sacramento Valley.
Sacramento Valley, okay,
Yeah, Northern California.
yes. I have a tiny little historical thing, and I promise not to take very much time.
You can.
I live,
I'm done talking, so please take-
okay. Well, I lived in the Bakersfield area for a while in
Uh-huh.
Southern California and Central Valley. And we met a couple of Basque sheep herders
Mhm.
in the area. And when they had flocks, they needed people to come and take care of the sheep. And they imported sheep herders. And the Basque people were very good with sheep. And they brought in their families and lived in the Bakersfield area. And there was a whole group of Basque people settled in the Bakersfield area. And they brought, of course, their civilization, their culture. And it just became a very interesting thing to talk occasionally to someone who was, and the Basque region there between France and Spain.
It's right on the border of France and Spain. It has its
Yeah.
own language. It's got a really unique culture.
Yeah,
That's-
it's not
that's-
French and it's not Spanish. It's
No,
very
it's-
unique.
Yeah,
But they're still there. I mean, there's still people
Yeah.
there, and it's very interesting to talk to people who they just came to tend sheep, and was pretty interesting to talk to some of those people.
Yeah, it's a fascinating history, both in and out of the Basque region. I mean, the mountains, it's in the Pyrenees Mountains, and
Yes.
those mountains are very, very high, and their culture remained isolated for even
Yes.
still. It's not all that accessible even now. But also a lot of those ranchers spread out into Montana, Wyoming. They're all over the place in the
Yes,
Northwest now.
but
and-
they were well known for their restaurants in that area. And we
Yeah,
would go and have these wonderful big meals, and they were famous for serving family style.
Mhm.
And you would go in and you'd sit at these long tables, and they would just give you bowls of food or plates of food, and everybody would eat together. And that was one of the things they did best. And they would talk to you, and it was just wonderful to eat. That sounds really odd, but wonderful to just eat and get to know these people. It was great,
yeah.
and I really enjoyed that.
Our a good deal of the wool that we spin, our stone soup yarn, comes from a ranch that is a Basque family.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons and the mill that we work with out in Wyoming, one of the reasons that they started their mill only a couple of years before we started doing yarn. So, and I got to know them when they were getting that mill up and running before we were even thinking about doing yarn. And one of the inspirations for creating that mill was that they went to church with a lot of these Basque farmers, and they got to know them, and they were watching them, like after shearing, they were throwing the wool in the ditches along the road because there was no, it would have cost more to take it to market than they would have gotten back for it. And they had already spent money on shearing, like it just wasn't even worth trucking it anywhere. And so these two women who, were involved in church activities together decided to start a mill to deal with it. And it's a thriving mill now. I mean, they had some ups and downs in the beginning, but it's a thriving family business now, and they're still dealing with all the same ranchers today. So
Shows you that people look for opportunities everywhere. That's great.
well, yeah, I love the story of that so many people came. I mean, people from everywhere came during the gold rush to the West Coast to try to make a fortune that way. But people who came from the Basque region had specific goals in mind. Like you mentioned, they had other businesses and things that they wanted to
Yeah.
do. Thought, oh, let's try to make some quick money and then go off and do our other thing.
But it was their gift that they were really good at sheep herding. I mean, that was one of their gifts.
Correct. And
Yeah.
they have really unique they have unique husbandry programs that are part of their culture. They have unique clothing that they wear when they're herding, and they do a lot of their herding on horseback, and it's just fascinating.
Yes,
they-
they're great. We're very interesting people.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get off track.
No, it's fine. It's always nice to hear firsthand accounts. Okay, I'm gonna take my knitting out now and stop talking.
And I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So my question is, how different do you think this yarn is because you blended it with merino? What do you think the characteristics might have been if it was just purely the CVM Rummelsdale?
Well, like I was saying, we did have a batch of sample. We had a sample batch. Let me just get a skein of that. I hang on.
A little side comment about the California gold rush and migration. Apparently, it was the largest worldwide migration ever known, was
I
to
can
the
believe it.
California gold
Yeah.
rush. There were a bunch of reasons. There was a famine in China. There was slavery in the Southeast. that drove people away to seek new lives. There was trouble in South America.
Oh,
So
yeah.
there were migrations from all corners of the earth came to
Yes.
California during the gold rush,
Mm.
which is it was much a bigger deal than I ever knew growing up on the East Coast. Yeah.
Yes. They told us a lot when I was in school in California.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the 100% CVM that we have. And you see those little white neppy things that are on it? Like they're like little pills of them.
Yeah.
That's what that was like sort of the deal. It's full of them. See them? It's
Yeah,
got the that was a deal breaker for me. It was like,
That
I'm
looks
not-
a lot more rustic.
I'm not paying all that money for this. The first thing people are going to say when they get this is, I paid what for this? And this is, it's got all these little, it almost looks like a tweed, except they're not attached. They're just sitting there.
But it's second cuts probably. Huh?
It's shortcuts. Yeah.
Did the carding that you talked about or combing get rid of those things with the final product, do you think?
That's what I said. Yeah. Combing will take this out. And that's why when we got this spun, the comb wasn't up and running at the mill yet. So she didn't really have a chance to comb it to see if that would fix the problem, but it must have fixed the problem because the new yarn came out much, much smoother and better. But in terms of how it feels, let me get a skein of the, I'm sorry, I didn't get a skein of the other new one. Because I haven't knit with the CVM yet, the pure CVM yet, even though I really want to. I was gonna say that when I knit with this light gray yarn in the samples, that I just felt like it was so soft. And when I picked up this skein of pure CVM, I thought, oh, it's so much rougher. But now that I have them in my hands side by side, they feel really similar. The pure CVM is slightly less soft, but again, I'm pretty sure, I know it wasn't combed, so I'm sure that's the reason, and not the fiber itself. Now, if I pull out some fibers, you won't be able to see this, but if I pull out some fibers from the yarn and look at them, they're really similar. There's nothing discernible between, without having a microscope or a spyglass. I mean, I don't see anything really discernible between the two.
So the CVM Rommeldale is also about the same length as Merino?
Yeah, 3 to 6 inches. Yeah.
I'm always curious how much, like when you get those short bits, how much of that is related to how it gets sheared.
It's all related to that.
That's
yeah.
what I thought. But then the combing, if it's got a lot of second cuts, the combing would take that out.
Absolutely. And the difference between these two skeins is amazing. I mean, and you know, we were just like, why did you even spin the sample batch then? It's just wait until your comb is set up and do it then. The difference is remarkable in terms of the texture and even the kind of hairiness. I mean, they're both 3-ply yarns, but the one we spun for the wool along is loftier. I just think it's superior for some reason.
It's interesting that it could be loftier with the combed preparation.
Yeah, normally that wouldn't be the case, but I do think there might be slightly less twist on it.
Hmm.
And possibly the merino adds a bit.
Of the
But
loft.
I mean, the CVM is to merino what Cormo is to merino. I mean, they're practically, they're practically the same.
So you've got that crimp and you've got the fineness.
Yeah, everything about the fiber is really similar.
And then the Romney genetics adds some strength.
Well, like I was saying before, the Romney genetics are really the purpose of introducing Romney was a business purpose, you know, to make a stronger sheep without sacrificing the wool. So a larger sheep with more meat and more resistance to, heat and parasites and things like that. And not really to influence the wool at all, except perhaps to add color, but that no one wants to add color. I mean, that was probably not a big factor.
It's only us knitters and hand spinners.
And only in the last, 50 years, since the 1970s, has that been really a recognized thing. Well, actually, starting after the war, so starting in the 50s, there was a little bit of it, but the real big push came after the 70s. Or
maybe back in the Bible was Jacob's coat naturally colored wool, or did they dye it?
And I have a question.
Yes.
Did you say this yarn came from a Pennsylvania farm? And if so, where in Pennsylvania?
It's near Danbury, I think.
Oh, okay. Danville.
Yeah. Danville. Yeah.
Okay.
It's Marushka Farms.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a 100-year-old farm that was taken over in 2015, I think, by the current owner. Maybe that date might not be exactly right, but and they've been doing, let me just see, I have notes about it. Let me see if they have oh, she's been there since 2009. She purchased the flock. It is the largest flock of Rommeldale CVMs, and she purchased in 2009 from a farm in Ohio and moved it to her farm. Let's see. And all of the people who are really working with CVMs and love them will always go back to the genetics, like how strict they are about the genetics of their flock and how far back to the original flock they trace their genetics. And they're very, very knowledgeable about the genetics of their sheep. She's the one who is crossbreeding Icelandics and Romaldales, with the goal of producing like a really good spinning fiber.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah. Audrey?
So my question is, you said this is 60/40 CVM and, oh, here, I'll lower my hand there, and merino. Is each ply 60/40, or is it that you have 2 plies merino and 1 ply CVM?
No, the fiber's all blended in a big batch. So
Okay, so each ply is 60/40.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, just a question.
All the fiber is blended and then they spin it and then they ply it. So
Okay.
throughout, we've never done a yarn that was like a twin yarn. I have to ask our mills like what that would be like, you know. I feel like I've done it with hand spinning, but and with fiber like this, you could do it. It wouldn't be, you wouldn't feel like the difference. But what can happen by doing, like, say you did a 2-ply with 2 different breeds, if they shrink differently when they're washed, or they bloom differently when they're washed, that could be like a interesting experiment. Or
reshape, it would reshape your article. your
yeah,
clothing.
AKA a disaster, it's
Yeah.
possible. I mean, you kind of do, you can get a little bit of that when you do like the barber pole yarns, even different colors of fleece. If the texture of one coat is very different from the other, you can get some of that. You'd have to have spun it very evenly for it to be very even, to wash very evenly. Anyway.
There are some weavers that deliberately weave with different yarns that have different elasticity in their characteristics. And so they weave it under a certain tension, and then when they take it off the loom or wash it, it puckers up in a particular way, in various ways. And they experiment a lot with the yarn, the fiber, how much twist it has to make it really bouncy and stuff like that. And then they end up making some pretty interesting fabric. So it's a similar idea. But you want to do it deliberately. I mean, you might want to do it once accidentally and then see if you want to do it on purpose.
Well, and the thing is that weaving is intrinsically stable. Like that whole architecture of the woven squares has all the stability in the world. So you can do like really weird things and still have a woven fabric. But with knit stitches, which are all interlocking and stretchy, you really need to be up for whatever happens, whatever comes out in the wash.
Well, I'm really liking this yarn.
Well, I'm really glad. And we do have, we have extra skeins. So if it's something, you know, there's plenty for sweaters and other projects if you want some.
Does anybody see it as being like having this pinky,
Like a peachy tone
yeah,
to it.
gray, yeah. Do you see that? Or is it just me?
No, I see it.
Okay.
It's kind of a oatmeal. It's almost surely got some more in it, along with some gray. The darker one definitely has some of that warm brown.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful color. Wow.
Yeah, this one is, I really love the gray of this. Came out really pretty. And with the other colors, so pretty. By the way, let me go looking for the samples and see if they are here. I was going to show you the samples. Okay, are you ready? So these are my samples that I knit. I thought I'd show them to you this week because we're so close to the finish line. So here's my scarf. This is my large scarf. And you can see it's really large. It's, look how beautiful that is. So this is yarn number 1, yarn number 2, yarn number 3. This is the one we're working with 4. And this is yarn number 5, which we'll talk about next week.
So
But
is that the same thing as the large wrap?
No, it's the
Okay.
large scarf.
Large scarf, okay.
So it's the 11 or 12 inch wide scarf. The wrap, the large wrap is a little bit longer, I think, and wider, like almost twice as wide as this.
Right.
So I knit the large scarf, the cowl, the small cowl, and the blanket, and the cowl's missing somewhere, so I'll have to get that. The photographer probably still has it, but, and this is the blanket, the lap blanket.
Nice.
So it's 11 stripes that are all different widths. You can see what I did. Like some of my stripes are really little, like this little one over here. It's only 6 rows of pattern plus the garter. But I like the different widths, especially in mixing up the colors and stuff. I don't like anything to be too even. And then one of them I made like 1.5, like that one I made 1.5 because I could, you know. I wanted to, I didn't think I could get another whole stripe, so I wanted to use up the yarn. I just kept going.
The Corriedale looks so yellow when combined with all the other yarns.
It is quite yellow. It's very creamy. So white isn't always just white. I mean, and it's not because there's tan mixed in. That's just the color of this particular batch. We did find out where the Corriedale came from. It was not the same source as the Corriedale we made our confection with, and now I can't remember again where it's from, whether it's from New York State or I know it's not, it is New York State, I think. Anyway, I
The
do like,
scarf is just beautiful, and I hope mine looks half as good.
I'm sure it will. I mean, these pieces block out so beautifully without any effort, really. I mean, I did put them on blocking wires, but I didn't have to stretch them much. I just straightened them out. And in fact, the scarf was so long.
Yeah, the scarf, I swear my scarf's getting longer every day.
The scarf was so long, I actually squished it to make it shorter, and it did shrink to that, it did shrink
Okay.
down. And the blanket too, the blanket wanted to be like 2 inches bigger in all directions, so I didn't pin it out. I just put it on the wires and straightened it and let it lay there to dry, and it did shrink up a bit, not being pinned. So it did end up the exact dimensions that I estimated it would be. But I'm just in love with the combination of colors.
I really like the fact that you threw in the garter borders between
Yeah,
the colors. That really makes everything just snap.
Yeah, I experimented with clean, like still having the garter border, but stopping one color and starting the next one in a clean line. And this was just so much more lively, and it gave it kind of a really crisp look, kind of handsome. I don't know where that cowl is. I'll have to see if I can get that back. Who put that yarn on the floor? Is that you? You playing with the yarn. Anyway.
And if we
Yeah.
want, it's Karen. If we
Hi,
want,
Karen.
hello, if we wanted to order extra of the CMV that we're working with, and we want to make a sweater out of it, it seems to me that when I'm knitting it, now it's much denser. I'm not getting as wide a stripe. So number one, how much is the 2 ounce ball? Because that's what they're in, right?
Yeah, all the yarns are spun the same. So they're all 150 yards in the 2 ounce ball.
Right. And how much would this one, the CMV, be?
Oh, the CVM, let me look in the store here. I think it might be 20, but I can't remember.
Isn't the gray stripe 10 rows where the other stripes were more like 12, not including the garter ridges.
They're all different, I think. I think the first
That might
stripe.
be why it's not as wide, Karen.
Oh, I realize that.
Mine went equally far. I know what you mean about it feeling denser. Yeah, so the skeins are $22. I think many of them are similar. And you would probably need I don't know, about 10 for a sweater.
Yeah.
I mean, depends on what sweater you're making, but I usually use, well, I don't know, I usually use like 1,200 out of DK. Let me just look at something. Like if you were gonna make, like what sweater would you make?
I'm not sure.
Maybe home office, let's just say that. For home office. Now that takes, so for a 40-inch sweater, yeah, 10 skeins would be more than enough. And that's like a long sweater, a fairly long sweater. It's, I don't know, but you look like a petite person. You might not want it that long. You could probably get away with.
No, I'm short.
Yeah, you could probably get away with less yarn and make the side seams quite a bit shorter, because I think the side seams of that are 17 inches.
Right. But also I have to add exchange from the Canadian dollar.
Yeah, I know.
I'd like to tell a little bit of a funny moment I had. My son and his family just got on a cruise to Iceland and Greenland.
Oh, I'm jealous.
And unless I declare a present, I don't get one. So I wrote down all the cities they were going to, and I looked at all the yarn shops, and I couldn't believe the price of muskox yarn. It was astronomical. Plus, in Canada, we can get it anyway from the Arctic and northern western provinces. So instead, my husband's getting postage stamps.
I was gonna say, I think most of the muskox, most of the Kiviot is controlled by the native people up in the Yukon and Arctic, and so they're probably exporting it over there. So you're probably paying for.
No, they're also
is it native
them there? Yes. And the other thing is, I laughed at them selling Rowan wool.
My favorite story about that was when Kim went on her trip around Iceland. They drove around the perimeter road for like a week or something. She kept texting me and she's like, "And they have yarn at the gas station." They just sell yarn. They sell yarn everywhere there.
Well, they're cold.
Well, and people knit there.
Sorry, there was one store that said that during COVID they would not be taking orders because the mail and everything was so unreliable.
Sounds familiar.
Well, they missed out because during COVID was actually a really kind of a good time to be a yarn store. But not everybody, is set up for that. So
I wanted to piggyback on Carol's talk about the Pyrenees. I had the opportunity to visit San Sebastian in the Basque region, and then go up into the Pyrenees. And we were more in the French-speaking area of the Pyrenees, but we hired a guide to take us. We stayed in a village that every building was made from the rock of the mountain. It was gorgeous. And we hired a guide to take us into the mountains to educate us on the birds of the Pyrenees. But what I was most interested in was his dog. He had a Great Mountain Pyrenees dog that
Oh,
are
those are beautiful. Yeah.
beautiful, white, intelligent shepherd dogs that can take down any enemy of the sheep in a heartbeat, powerful animals. And that's really about all I looked at for the whole hike. It was just incredible. And the bond between he and that dog, it was just amazing. It was really just amazing. I can't recommend that area any for the food, for the nature.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Well, Anne was talking about, the sheep not needing, I mean, they have to take care of themselves, but the dogs are just incredible.
Yes.
They take care of this, they take care of the flock. And they have
A lot-
herding contests,
A
Yeah.
lot of people here have Great Pyrenees working farm. A lot of working farms here have Great Pyrenees dogs because they're and always people are always like finding a pair of them wandering around because they wander off sometimes and just they always go home. They're just
very independent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They like to get out and have a walkabout and a tour of the place. Yeah. David has I never got to do it, but David went there on his bicycle.
Oh wow.
One time we had these friends who had a small bike touring company, and they went on like a little more off the beaten track places, and they went up there one summer. So they did these tours in Italy and France a lot, but when they would be over there to work, they would do these exploration rides. The couple would do them with someone that they like, a friend, and David was friends with them back in New York. So one summer when he did he rode with them in Italy or something, or maybe France, he went on to do this exploratory ride in the Pyrenees, which, if you've been there, it's pretty
all uphill.
Very challenging. It was
they ride through it in the Tour de France. I mean, it's not like you can't do it, but
right.
Many of us can't do it.
Yeah. And Lori, the woman, and I got to go on a couple other trips with them, but not that one. She was like, and David is a very peculiar person, let's just put it that way. But she's like, he's right, he's like an ox, like he's so strong. And she's like, he's riding and riding, and his bike is practically vertical, and it kept tipping up off the ground. And when they got to where they were, she picked up his pack, and it weighed like a ton. And he's like, what have you got in here? And it was full of like books and bottles of vitamins and like one change of clothes. And she's just like, are you crazy? Like, as if climbing the mountains wasn't enough, I'm going to carry 50 pounds of glass bottles. That's David.
I think I'm married to a similar creature. Yes.
Can't tell him anything.
Nope.
Yeah.
And do you remember last week when I was saying that I had some issues with this beautiful number 4 yarn, that it was thick and thin and thick and thin, and placed in different places. So I did email David, and he said, oh, so sorry, no problem. I'll send you a replacement.
Are you talking about the Perrindale?
No,
Oh,
no, it's
okay.
this one that we're using now.
Oh, okay.
And so it's going to arrive in a couple of days, I think the 16th. So it's wonderful. And he said there'll be a shipping label in there for you to, ship back the defective yarn. Well, I had gone ahead and gotten all caught up with the yarn. So today I emailed and said, can I just pay for that second skein of yarn? Because I've been using, and I am using the one that has the flaws. I mean, but even though with its flaws, I just absolutely love the yarn. And I didn't want to rip it out. I didn't want to have to wait. So I'm just, I'll have a whole new skein then of the yarn. And I love it. I absolutely do love it. And then I had also told you that I was madly in love with the Corriedale, right?
Yes.
Yes, and it came today, and I have cast on for the North Wind cowl.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, so I've got that also. But just some, amusing to me yarn stories. But thanks for your great customer service and everything.
You're welcome.
Well, it turned out we had a couple, I said that last week. We had a couple people, and I'm thinking maybe there was like a part of the batch, like a section of the batch that just, went awry, because 3 or 4 people mentioned it or emailed us, and we didn't hear any more. So must have been a particular part of the run.
I had one tiny flaw in mine where it was all fluffy for about an inch, but it was fun to knit.
Yeah, and that those kinds of things happen with the artisanal milling process. It's just not, bye Jose. It's just not that it's not as tightly calibrated machinery, and the fiber itself, we don't treat it. We don't treat our fibers to make them super smooth and consistent and malleable, which is unfortunately most mills achieve that with chemicals. So we don't do any of that, and they have a will of their own when they go through the machinery. They have there's going to be some slubs and some unevenness, and even any 2-ply yarn is going to show off a lot more of that than a 3-ply yarn. So that's the thing about 2-ply yarns. You see a lot more of the inconsistency that's happening all the time in the milling process, but 3-ply yarns compensate. In a 3-ply yarn, you get a lot more compensation, or any multi-ply yarn, you get a lot more compensation for unevenness. And so the thicker and thinner parts can marry up differently and smooth the whole thing out a lot better than in a 2-ply.
When are you going to email us about registering for the Rhinebeck knit along that starts August 1st?
Well, I'm probably not personally going to email you, Gary. just
Which
kidding.
newsletter?
Well, we got a card.
Yeah, the cards
got
are
a card,
out,
but it's not working yet.
Yeah, no,
At least mine wasn't.
No, it won't be live. It's so funny that you bring that up, because we have a marketing team, and they're young. And I was just saying to Barb the other day, we've been kind of pushing them a little bit more, and because they've been working here long enough now that they really should be on their own a little bit more. So the other day we were pushing them a little bit, and then after the meeting I said to Barb, I didn't hear anything about the Rhinebeck knit along yet, did you? it's coming up in just a few weeks, and so far, nobody's mentioned it. So, I'll have to push on that
Speak
too.
to them.
Yes.
And also, you know, when you're
Susan,
gonna
that
show
looks-
us the
Susan,
festival.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Karen. I have to tell Susan how amazing her sweater
It's
looks.
beautiful. Wow.
Look at that.
Oh,
Wow.
I said, I think it's credit to the designer, not the knitter.
You did a great
If
job.
I
too.
see you
It's
at Rhinebeck,
beautiful.
I intend to wear it. I
Beautiful.
don't know if I'll let you close, and I'll wave to you.
I forget what yarn. Is it the Targi? I forget.
No, it's the Findandy.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I chose the same yarn that was when you displayed it at Maryland Sheep and Wool. I chose the
Oh,
same yarn.
the gray. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's I just can't stop knitting. It's wonderful.
What were you gonna say, Karen? What was the last part of your? I'm sorry.
The Festivus wool that's already in, that's
Uh-huh.
been in about a month and a half,
Uh-huh.
that you were going to wait until others were in the shop to show us.
Uh-huh. I didn't, we're not showing that off yet. That's like not coming out for a couple months yet.
Good try, Karen.
If I
because-
didn't try, she'd be disappointed.
When
I saw the barn box patterns. I saw the barn box patterns today.
Oh, cool.
No way.
Yeah, I saw the barn box patterns
Where?
on the website.
They're not supposed to be visible yet.
They're there.
Oh my
For
goodness.
this month,
Yep.
Oh,
The July barn box patterns are up.
I could literally just crown somebody.
Oh,
They're nice.
They're
I
not
don't have
supposed to
the-
be there yet. They're not even all ready yet. Like literally.
Okay. Well, I just thought I would make your day.
I'm just so over other people. If I don't like, ugh.
You know what, though? It's not any longer, so they must have corrected their mistake.
Oh, okay. Well,
Yeah.
I'll go back and I can go back and look, but I saw them.
Yeah, check it because I don't see
Okay.
it. Sometimes people accidentally don't lock, don't
Maybe I have
hide it,
magical powers.
and then when they go back and hide it.
Yeah, it's not there right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm looking at it now.
Sometimes when they're working on stuff, it's hard to hide something while you're working on it, and then you hide. You just must have gone right when that was
Perfect.
I
happening.
have magical powers. Oops. Ah. If I could spell, I'd be dangerous.
So Ian, I think if you need help with getting the Rhinebeck knit along published, you could get Karen to call the office.
There you go. Everyone here knows Karen. She's a frequent flyer and we love her.
I love the fact that she asks every time. I'm
Yeah.
all for that.
I know it would, like she said, we'd be disappointed if she didn't do it.
If
So
you're
Ian, can I
telling-
ask
if-
what you
Oh,
are
so
knitting
why
on?
am I looking at them? Why am I looking at them?
Under barn box?
Yep,
Did you push reset on your website?
I just
and-
went to Knit Spot website.
I only see May 2022.
Okay, I see July 2022 collection. Want me to say the names, Anne? I won't say them if you don't want me to.
No, I don't.
No, please don't. Please don't.
I'm not gonna say anything out loud.
But you could
I see
like
July,
Audrey
I-
said,
July 2021, but I don't see July 2022.
refresh your page, and I bet you it goes away.
Well,
Don't
I just
refresh
pulled
it.
it up right now. I'd closed it out before.
Oh wow, huh?
I have magical powers. It says July 2022 collection.
She might need to remove her cache if it's cache from before.
Yeah.
Or-
I'm not logged in. I just pulled it up. All right, so Anne's gonna remove me from the belonging at all.
I don't have any control over that, so thank goodness.
Okay,
That-
I won't
that's-
say anything out loud.
But you just did.
No, I didn't say what the patterns were.
Oh, you
Oh.
know what? And it's where it says join Barn Box, and then it says July 2/22.
Yeah, I'm
Oh.
sorry. I'm
Right, so
sorry. I
now
thought everybody
But
was
but
looking
now
at them.
everybody knows about it. Thank you.
I'm not
You're
gonna look.
welcome.
I'm not
I-
looking because
Anne's
I
not
like to.
speaking to me anymore. Anne
Oh.
won't speak to me anymore. I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm not. I don't care.
But it doesn't show any patterns.
It shows pictures. But
Oh.
sorry. I'm so excited when Barn Box rolls around.
And one of the problems of Rhinebeck not being advertised yet is I've been telling new people about joining. And so they're anticipating joining.
I understand, but it is like almost a month in advance right now. So I mean, we're starting we're starting like in 3 weeks. So there's still a little ways to go. And we're on it, don't worry. You know, we're a small business, Karen, so we don't have like 50 people that work here to cover everything. And clearly, if we did, it would be even more a mess. I'd have 50 people to watch over and tell them how to do their job. Let me see.
So here's a Rhinebeck question. I know what sweater I'm gonna do, and I've done the swatch, and I'm gonna do another swatch with the patterning. But we don't cast on until we start, correct? If
you want to be eligible for prizes, you need to cast on at the start date and finish before the end date.
Okay.
If you don't care about prizes, then you can bring a half finished project, or you can cast on any time, or anything you want. And you can do your swatch beforehand. Yeah, swatching beforehand is fine.
Okay. Yeah, I do want to win a prize.
Audrey, what pattern are you doing? You mentioned something a couple weeks ago, but I didn't write down the pattern you're doing.
Well, it's French, so it sounds different, but vendage. VENDAGE.
NGE.
NGE. Vendange. If
Vendange.
vendange, if I know how to go French on my accent, which I don't.
Thank you.
I actually went on Google Translate to listen to it before, and it's I can't really do it, but it's like vendange. Vendange.
Vendange.
It's almost like an O. And I'm sure regionally it changes as well, but that's the season of grape crushing or something like that.
I think it's going to be a beautiful fall sweater.
Yeah, we have that nice sample that Barb knit.
I thought Julie knit one. Did she knit it for herself?
She did.
Yeah. I'm also liking the idea of larger needles. It is a larger sweater, but I'm hoping the larger needles will also make it larger yarn, larger needles. It might go a little faster.
It does. It goes really quick, and the body is all one piece.
I
So-
can't even imagine how many stitches that will be. I might.
It's not a lot because the gauge is like 3.5 stitches per inch. It's very, loose. What length are you gonna make? The shorter?
I'm
or
gonna do the longer.
Uh-huh. That'll be nice.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, who's making the longer vendage?
Audrey.
Audrey. I just got the shipment of Kent DK and I'm making the longer version as well. I'm really excited.
You're using the DK?
Yeah, I think so.
It calls for worsted weight.
Oh, no, it's worsted. You're
Okay.
right. You're right. You're right.
Okay.
Worsted. Yeah, it's worsted.
I was gonna say, don't mind that yet.
Yeah, I won't. No, it is. I'm excited. I got the mussel shell.
Oh, that'll be nice.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That'll
Barb
be
knit,
an
Ooh, pretty.
elegant sweater.
Barb knit one in Kent worsted, and I can't remember if it was Tide Pool or Muscle Shell now, but it's beautiful.
Yeah, I think we're all using Rhinebeck as deadlines for all these things we want to have knitted in case it's cool enough.
Uh-huh.
Last year was quite warm back there until you got drenched by the rain.
Yeah, it was, usually it's like each day is a little different.
Yeah.
So, but it was warmer. The first day was warm and the second day was chilly.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think it means like the harvest of grapes, the grape harvest.
Mhm.
Okay, I just took out my swatch. I'm getting ready.
Yeah, vendange means the grape harvest.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, somebody who's lived 30 years in Napa Valley knows that. You want to really impress friends at parties? You say, it's about time for veraison, isn't it?
Mhm.
Veraison means when the grapes turn from opaque to clear, that's when you start to get ready for harvest.
Oh,
So you can impress your friends.
and I copied down a word you said and looked up the definition. Hang on. But I don't know how you meant it in related to sheep. Wait. Where is it? Extruding.
Oh, extruding is pushing out,
Yes.
like when you extrude plastics. So when you make hair or sheep makes hair, it's extruded through the skin, from the hair follicle, which is buried under the skin. There's a canal, a tiny canal from the hair follicle to the outside, and the keratin, the protein substance that hair is made out of, is actually extruded out through that tiny canal. So it's like a liquid protein substance that it doesn't grow like a root. It doesn't grow like a plant or anything like that. It's produced from like a semi-liquid substance that occurs in your skin.
Okay.
And interestingly, I've said this before, and I honestly not sure that there's a scientific foundation in this, but I've read it in several different places about wool hair. That one of the ways that the crimp forms in the wool, so that like fine wool sheep tend to be greasier. So merino and cormo and those kind of sheep tend to have heavier grease in their skin and fleece, and they produce a thicker, waxier amount of it than a long wool sheep, which they often hardly have any greasiness in their fleece. And it is thought that the reason that those fine wools have such a higher, tighter crimp is that the waxy, greasy stuff can harden along the sides of the canal, like cholesterol collects on in our veins, and that when the keratin substance is extruding its way out, is extruding through the canal, it's getting bent back and forth by these collections of clotted fat and grease that are hardening there, so that it's having to form a zigzag as it makes its way out the canal. And I've read that in several places. I honestly don't know if scientifically, it doesn't seem like it would make sense scientifically, but that's
Every single follicle would have to have laid it down in a similar fashion for the whole
Exactly.
fleece to have that uniform crimp.
well, not really, but I mean,
No.
yeah, but you're right. That's what came to my mind too. Like, that doesn't make complete sense, but maybe it's true. I don't know. One of these days when I'm just twiddling my thumbs, I'll have to look it up and see if I can find it. It's one of those things that always slips my mind when I'm looking around for stuff to know.
Well, is the crimpiness of a fleece, is it on the younger, more of the fleece more crimped than the older fleece? Is it measured that way? I don't know.
No, not necessarily. Age doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it, but the coarseness of the fiber does. So the softer and finer the fiber in general, the tighter and more frequent the crimp.
Okay.
So it's like,
So
you
it's
know, just
pretty uniform, no matter how long the sheep has been developing its fleece. It's pretty uniform throughout. Do you know what I'm saying?
well,
As it grows out, it doesn't relax, or
the tips of the fleece always get a little bit damaged, and so the crimp does get a little bit ruined in those areas. So yes, as the damaged hair separates a little bit and gets roughed up, you do see less crimpiness on those outer pieces, those outer tip. They call them the tips of the locks.
okay. Huh.
And the coarseness, you know, as sheep age, their fleece does tend to get coarser. There's a tendency for that. So you might lose a little bit of crimp as a sheep ages.
Okay.
But the fleece itself is getting sheared every 6 months. Usually most sheep get sheared twice a year. So that's not a really long time to age,
Okay.
but bye, Mindy. And another reason why coating them makes sense to some people.
Hmm.
I didn't realize what time it was already, but it's time.
Time to say goodnight. Thank you so much, Ian. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thanks for
you're-
all the info.
All right, good night.
That was
See you
Thank
Saturday.
you.
Good
All
night.
right. I
Good
hope
night
I
to you.
answered your question, Jean.
No, you did. You did. By hook or crook, I got it.
All
Thank
right.
you.
All right. Bye, everybody.